What up, FCFS? I couldn't even get it right there. I haven't said that in a long time, and I tried to hit it, and I'm like, shit, I don't remember what I said. Anyway, what is up? This is a full coverage football show. My name is Jeremy. That's Drew. Follow me on Twitter at SomervilleCLE. Follow Drew at DetroitDave7 on the Twitter box. You want to follow our show on Facebook, get all our likes, shares, all that up. Help us out, fb.me/FCFS pod. Check us out on TikTok now, where we are growing apparently with our TikTok following. Yet somehow not keeping up with my 10-year-old who all of a sudden has 800 followers on TikTok and has posted nothing. So I'm still not sure how to use social media, but hey, thanks for joining us tonight. Let's get into this right off the bat, brother. How you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. I don't know how to use social media either. Like, I think maybe we're just kind of like slightly past it, right? And so we're just kind of like, we can use it, but we can't excel in that space. But good for her and her 800 followers.
I'm freaked out by it because she's 10 years old and has 800 followers.
I wouldn't be comfortable. She doesn't know 800 people.
I'm like,
right? Who are these people?
Anybody ever message you? No, why? I'm like, I swear to God, if someone message you,
let
me know right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to end up fighting some kid from Thailand at some point. But
take a flight to Thailand.
It'd be like, man. Peter and the chicken. I will not stop until I whoop this dude or whoever it is. Anyway, this is the full coverage football show. We are here to talk football. And yeah, we had the best weekend of football probably ever last weekend. Yet we're not going to start with that. We're going to start with a big story that came out yesterday. New Orleans Saints head coach Sean Payton decided to walk away from team after 16 years, and here's what he had to say. Drew, let me know if you can hear this. Make sure I did this right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to be your head coach for 16 years. I appreciate each and every one of them. And so thank you for sticking with us in the good times and in the tough times. They've been outstanding. And so it's really that feeling of.
For those of you who didn't get to watch the press conference yesterday, we'd give you a little bit of that audio. You could tell by his slow speech, by his delayed cadence, that this was something that was really hard for him to do. Sean Payton spent 16 years in New Orleans. I mean, this is a franchise that before Sean Payton was the Cleveland Browns, the New York Giants, hell, the Detroit Lions. They were all on that same level, basically, where they had become a joke in the NFL. 16 years, a Super Bowl victory, a Coach of the Year, 9 10-win seasons. He had 4 11-win seasons, 63.1% winning percentage. And now heading into what is probably their hardest offseason since before he came to the team, before they brought in Drew Brees, he walks away. What are your thoughts before we get into the future? What are your thoughts about Sean Payton as a head coach and what he did for New Orleans? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think kind of like you kind of hit on it there. It was more like what that team and that organization did in New Orleans after Katrina, of course, bringing the Super Bowl eventually. But that's like what I'll kind of remember about Sean Payton. I know he has one Super Bowl. And listen, I'm not underrating him as a coach. I just think that what he did was kind of beyond just what we saw in New Orleans. Now, don't get me wrong, and I know Sean Payton isn't the end-all, be-all, salary cap-wise, roster-wise. He kind of is to an extent.
Mm-hmm.
He decided to throw all his eggs in the Taysom Hill basket. They end up being $70 million above the cap.
Million.
Yeah, so it was an easy time to walk away. But yeah, I think his career is kind of all of that put into one. But I also don't think he's going to be done coaching either.
I don't think he's done coaching either. I think eventually he comes back. It's just time to recharge the batteries. You've been in one place 16 years, second longest tenured head coach in the league behind only the hoodie, who
good timing too.
Keep going
to step away and recharge the batteries, right?
Exactly. And basically what this says is, to me, the way I look at this is Mike McCarthy's staying on in Dallas, and then next year, if they struggle, Sean Payton goes to Dallas. I think that was his dream job all along. I think that's where he wanted to be after he left there as the offense coordinator. But looking at what he did for New Orleans, you're absolutely right. It was what they did for the city after Katrina. The hardest time for that city He came in, Drew Brees, the punt block in the first Monday night game after Katrina, all that just set the city on fire. And for him and Drew Brees to be together, it was two guys who think alike, who look at the game the same, who prepare the same. It was a perfect marriage, and it showed that. And then this year he had no Drew Brees. He tried the Taysom Hill experiment. We've hit on it a million times how we really don't feel like that's the guy. And for all the people who still think he's a young guy, you got to remember he went on a Mormon mission. He's old at this point for NFL players. Like, he's not the young guy. Like, he did that. He was gone for 4 years on his Mormon mission.
Everybody kind of thinks he's ass. Like, I don't think it's just us. Like, I think
that's it too.
I think the only person that thinks he's good is Sean Payton.
And maybe he didn't think he was good. He just thought he could do something with him. And the kid's got talent or I call him a kid after I just called him old, but he's got talent. He's just not an NFL quarterback, a full-time guy. He can do a lot of things on the field, and that's what you want from him. However, when you look at this now that we've, memorialized what he did there to a certain extent, looking forward, $74 million over the cap. Do you continue, because you were only a game or two away from the playoffs? You were a game away from the playoffs, basically. Basically, if the Rams didn't lose to the Niners, and we'll talk more about those two teams in a little bit. If the Rams didn't lose to the Niners, Sean Payton would have been in the playoffs with the Saints and been led by anybody you could throw out there, quarterback. So you're $74 million over. You're losing Sean Payton. Where do you go from here? Let's start with head coach. What do you think they look for in a head coach?
I think it's probably going to be Dennis Allen, right? It just that just seems to make the most sense at this point. Aaron Glenn, we talked about, you and I, as a possibility. I hope that doesn't happen. To your point, though, you can't, even though the roster's close, you can't possibly bring back a team to the same level as far as roster wise as this team was. So you don't have any other option to kind of just pivot, and I don't want to say rebuild because I know there's still pieces there, but the expectations got to be pretty low heading into next season. There's just not a whole lot you can retain of guys that are coming up on deals. Now, of course, you can trade Michael Thomas, which I do think they actually end up doing.
I think so.
That'll get some cap relief. I mean, they don't have a choice really at this point, and I know that things weren't great between Sean Payton and Michael Thomas, or Michael Thomas and the organization. But those are kind of the two guys that I expect one of them to be hired. But as far as the cap situation, I mean, your team may have been on the cusp of the playoffs, but you don't have the luxury of trying to, put out a roster that's going to win when you're as under the cap, or over the cap rather, as you are.
I'm with you on that. And the two guys you brought up, Dennis Allen, Aaron Glenn. Aaron Glenn, I hit you immediately as soon as this came out yesterday. I threw it in the DMs. Like, that's a guy I think fits. But I think Aaron Glenn fits if they decide to go full rebuild. Dennis Allen, I think, is more the guy who's already been through a rebuild when he was a head coach, I believe, Raiders, if I remember correctly, off the top of my head. And he's been through that. He's ready to – I feel like Dennis Allen at this point wants a team that is more prepared to go right off the bat, where Aaron Glenn is more the teacher, young guy who can develop with the team. Now, they are $74 million over the cap, but we've seen teams figure that out and basically get rid of crap contracts. I'm sure they got enough, and Michael Thomas is going to go.
But they don't have a quarterback.
They don't.
That's the problem.
This is a draft. Maybe they find that guy. Maybe it's someone they can squeeze in. Maybe Jameis comes back on a cheap contract. They can look at that. And Jameis,
Ian
$5
Book
million again.
Really good.
Ian Book is not going to become really good.
He's not.
We can say a lot of possibilities. I don't think that's one of them. I think I'd rather have Taysom Hill. And the reason for that is not. I mean, Ian Book, what we saw from him was that he still thought he could play like he was at Notre Dame, where he thought he could beat guys around the edge, and that's not going to happen here in the NFL. But this team's weird because they could be aggressive. I still think they have some pieces where they could be aggressive and go forward. And not only is it what they have on their roster, but if you look at this division last year, you had Matt Ryan, or 2 years ago even, you were thinking you had Matt Ryan, you had Cam Newton, you had Tom Brady coming in, you had Drew Brees. And now there's a possibility that all those quarterbacks could be gone. Maybe not next year, but the season after, Matt Ryan probably is done or is likely to be dealt at some point. This is a division that could be anybody's division if Tom Brady retires, because I'm not scared of Blaine Gabbert or Kyle Trask in Tampa if Tommy hangs them up, and they can't fit in an Aaron Rodgers, even though people want to say that right now. We'll talk more about Aaron later. But it's a weird situation because they have to make a true decision how they are going forward 100%. Either they got to commit to being aggressive for a couple more years and trying to win a division title and maybe in one game in the playoffs, or they've got to say, it's time. We've been good for 16 years. Rebuild.
I actually think it's the worst head coach opening at this point.
Wow.
I think it's the worst.
Beyond the Texans?
Yes.
Giants?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't skip on me here?
I mean, no, I'm going to skip. But like, look at the Giants, right? Okay, the cap hell isn't as bad.
They couldn't field a roster the last game of the season.
Well, no, but okay. So think of it like this:
Yeah.
You're bringing in a new guy. You at least have So is Danny Dimes? We don't think that he's any good. Is Danny Dimes better than Taysom Hill as a quarterback? Yeah, probably.
They're both good at running. At least Taysom Hill finishes runs and doesn't get tackled by turf monsters.
They have early picks. The Texans. I mean, that's the thing about New Orleans is they don't have that draft value or that trade value as far as draft picks go. So you think if you take the Giants are picking high, you take Houston's picking third, I believe. So they have a top 5 pick. So you're going to be able to get a potential game changer there. And then you add on the Deshaun Watson factor, which you are going to get capital back on that. And also Houston knows where they're at right now as far as their plan, right? Like they know that they're in a rebuild. So there's way more capital on that end. And if you're the Giants, I still think that the roster is probably better with not a great cap situation, but a better cap situation. Mm-hmm. And I think you also have a quarterback on a rookie deal still.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I could say you're trying to sound like Skip for a second there, throwing out the worst job. But at least you explained it and going with that. Yeah, it makes sense. You're thinking there. Now, the Texans, you look at them. We're going to get into all these. Let's just get into it. All right, so Saints, throw it out there. Who is their head coach next year, in your opinion?
Dennis Allen.
Dennis Allen, 100%. I'm going to go Aaron Glenn. I'm going to stick with that. And I think they do decide to rebuild. That's the biggest thing there. I mean, you said it. You knew the other places they know what their rosters are. This one, you don't know what your roster is. You don't know where you're going. Maybe Mickey Loomis figures it out. Maybe they do it real quick, but you've got to decide instantly on this to figure out where you're going because your head coach needs to know going forward. And let's get first team we're going to go to. Let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Trent Baalke's still running the show. Who wants to work with him? You got Trevor Lawrence there. Who do you think ends up taking that job?
Still, I want to go with Leftwich still.
I like Leftwich there. He's been there for 2 interviews now. They've also interviewed Doug Peterson, Jim Caldwell, Kellen Moore, Todd Bowles, Nate Hackett, Matt Eberflus, Bill O'Brien, and Darrell Bevell.
Bill O'Brien was like the opposite of the Rooney Rule. They're like, we just got to bring Bill O'Brien in to save face because they're not hiring Bill O'Brien.
No, I was on Twitter talking Bill O'Brien with who was it? Oh, former Browns wide receiver Jordan Leslie, who was here for like a cup of tea. You're going back and forth, and we were talking about basically that Bill O'Brien's only getting this job opportunity not because he was a decent head coach and that the GM got the head coach fired, but because he's been touched by Saban. I mean, that's all it is. And then there were people from Houston getting in and basically saying
that's also the reason that Saban gets elite offensive play callers, at least name-wise. Like, think of the play callers that have gone through there for Saban. He basically brings guys in that are top notch or that maybe got knocked out in the NFL, whether it be roster situation, whatever it may be. They go be the OC, DC at under Saban for 2 years, 3 years, and then boom, back in the NFL. It's kind of a beautiful process. I mean, if I were to get canned in the NFL, I would go instead of taking just some random job, I would go be the coordinator for Nick Saban. Yeah.
Even if you're not a coordinator, just being on that staff, be like, hey, Nick Saban, he touched me on the shoulder.
Yeah. Or I'd go work for Bill Belichick, and then I would get a job and then just be terrible. So
yeah, it doesn't seem to have the same effect there.
It doesn't.
Moving on, let's look at the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos, I think, is one of the best opportunities out there. You look at what they have. I mean, they've got a young roster, plenty of cap space, 11 picks in the draft. They have interviewed Pats linebacker coach Gerard Mayo, Dan Quinn, Nate Hackett, Kellen Moore, Eric Bieniemy, Jonathan Gannon, Kevin O'Connell, Luke Getsy, Aaron Glenn, and Brian Callahan of the Bengals. Who do you see getting that job?
I'm gonna go with Bieniemy. That's gonna be
Bieniemy?
my pick for this one. Yeah. I mean, the one thing that you've noticed kind of through these teams is there's been a lot of interviews. Like sometimes it's very rare that you see this team go through this many interviews. Usually there's a guy that may or may not sell them the first time around, and that's just the way they go. So it's interesting for you to read off all the people that they've interviewed over the last couple of teams here, because sometimes you just know the guy in the room and you just fire that bullet right away.
Yep.
And instead of letting him interview elsewhere.
I'm gonna lean Dan Quinn with this one. I think they want a veteran guy who's been there and done it.
I don't hate that.
It's gonna be Dan Quinn, and I know people are gonna be like, "You're bringing in another defensive guy." I think Dan Quinn was a good head coach. We've talked about on the show how he just ran he ran through it, and they were sick of hearing his voice, and eventually he needed to go back to figuring out what he was good at. Now he's in Dallas. He's rocking the backwards hat. He's a different dude, and we'll see what he does going forward. Moving on here, let's go to the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings invested in $46 million guaranteed money on defense last offseason, and then they were terrible on defense with the defensive head coach, Mike Zimmer, who it seemed was maybe thinking of things off the field, as Drew has brought up many times on the show, and we cannot blame him for that. However, they've interviewed Todd Bowles, Kellen Moore, Kevin O'Connell, Nate Hackett, Jonathan Gannon, D'Amico Ryans, Dan Quinn, and Raheem Morris. Any of those guys going to get that job? Who you like?
I don't know. For some reason, Raheem Morris makes sense to me from what that team has been built around for as long as they have. That would be my pick. I don't know. The Vikings are kind of the wild card to me, right? I don't know what direction they're headed, and so I'll be very interested to see. I mean, I know they got a GM now that's in there. I don't know what if that necessarily favors one candidate to another. I think that's kind of hard to predict or say. So at this point, I'll go with Raheem Morris and kind of go from there. But
what I'm thinking with this one is they did just hire Browns player ops personnel guy Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. This was a guy who was with.
That's why I didn't say his name. I was like, yeah, I think it's got that
Kwesi
GM in there.
Adofo-Mensah, a guy who's out of Princeton. He's not your typical football GM where it's all football. This is more of a numbers analytics guy. And minority candidate getting hired here. Good for everyone who was looking for that. Another GM in that spot. Browns get third-round picks. I like that part of it. And when you look at his background, he was with the 49ers for 7 years before he came to Cleveland. D'Amico Ryans is a name. He's the 49ers defense coordinator right now, but he's just been their defense coordinator, so people try to link that based on 49ers. Not going to happen. Maybe it's someone from that staff. Maybe it's not. I think this one goes a little further, maybe into next Monday before you really get an idea, because I think Mensah really needs to figure out what he wants out of a head coaching candidate, and he probably has someone in mind, but he wants to interview some guys and be there for it. So we'll see on that one. I don't really have an idea. I'm with you. This is one that I think they could go either way, because this is another roster where you got to figure out what you're doing. Are you keeping Kirk Cousins? Are you going forward with Cousins and maybe thinking you get one more run with him? Or are you moving on?
This is the job where Dan Quinn could be, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think because this is way less of a, hey, we need to kind of go rip this down a little bit. I think Minnesota still has tons of good pieces there. I still think you can win some games with Kirk Cousins. I think you can win a playoff game with Kirk Cousins. So I think this is probably a job that if they were smart, they may bring in a veteran as compared to, a new up and comer, just because you kind of are walking in and knowing the process is where, a new head coach is kind of learning on how to kind of go about his day-to-day basis, where Dan Quinn can kind of walk in. And I think you make this coming up year, way more manageable, and the expectations are higher if you bring in a veteran as compared to a new guy, and that could be debated, I'm sure, but that's kind of at least how I feel about it.
Yeah, and this is probably the job where you have the most likely chance of winning right away, because that division, if you look at it, what are the Bears going to be next year? The Lions are up and coming. We can see that they're developing. Are they going to be good next year? Are they going to continue the tough play and growth? Is it going to translate into wins? The Packers, is Aaron Rodgers back? Is Devontae Adams back? If they're not, are you scared of the Packers with Jordan Love and Marquez Valdes-Scantling? Probably not. So this is your team where a veteran guy does make sense because you can probably win. Or is it a guy who can come in and grow as a head coach, but also be far enough to get them to win, i.e. Kevin Stefanski type, where he did that year one, he won, and then he still won this year. And that's another story. Let's move on. Let's go to the Chicago Bears, staying in that NFC North division. The Bears did hire Ryan Pohl, who was with the Chiefs, and he was also, crazy thing about this was he was an undrafted free agent with the Bears in 2008. Now
I saw the picture earlier 2022. Online, dude. They had the picture of him in the Bears jersey, and then the picture of him as GM, or just now rather. Mm-hmm. And the dude looks the same. He just doesn't have shoulder pads on.
He hasn't aged.
Yeah, it's amazing. Good for him, man.
I mean, this is, 13, 14 years later, and he's taken over the team. And this team, you've got a young quarterback in place. You've got to find someone to not necessarily build around him, but build an offense that suits him. And that's going to make sure he's standing upright and that what Matt Nagy did with him was just a fireable offense alone. We talked about it. I said he should have been arrested. This team, they've still got a solid defense. It's okay. It's not the Bears defense everyone wanted to talk about how great it was. They have interviewed Leslie Frazier, Brian Daboll, Doug Peterson, Byron Leftwich, Todd Bowles, Nate Hackett, Matt Eberflus, Brian Flores, Dan Quinn, Jim Caldwell, and Dennis Allen. Who do you like for this job?
I originally said Brian Flores. I think it's Jim Caldwell, and I think it deserves to be Jim Caldwell. And I think that's a great hire for the Bears. You bring in a even-keeled, business-like dude. He's not somebody set in his ways. That's one of the things I like with Jim Caldwell. He seemed to evolve over the years. It wasn't like, hey, this is what we do, and we can't change it based off the personnel. I love Jim Caldwell as the candidate here. I really hope, and I hate the Bears, but for Jim Caldwell, I have nothing but good things to say about Jim Caldwell, except, he didn't win us in the playoff games, but he was a solid coach, and he may have been right or wrongly fired based off of his record. Regardless, I think that it's a nice fit and a nice kind of stopgap to bring in kind of a veteran voice in the room, especially dealing with Fields, Justin Fields, and so I originally thought they may go like Brian Flores, and they may still do that, but for this point, I'll take Caldwell.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think it's going to be Caldwell, and the reason I think I think that works, is because last year we talked about when the Washington football team, we're like 2 weeks from finding out what their new name is. The Washington football team, they brought in Ron Rivera, Riverboat Ron, and what did we say about that over and over again on this show? Is that they brought in the adult in the room. It was someone who could take over and manage and get everyone on the same page. And I think that's what Caldwell does. I think a big part of the Caldwell hire is his staff. You have to find someone who is maybe the young up-and-coming offensive coordinator type who can be there to kind of develop something with Justin Fields and then maybe eventually be that top candidate to take over. Caldwell's 67 years old, I believe, and a lot of people want to bring that up. Oh, he's 67. He's too old. You're looking at Bill Belichick at 68, 69. Bruce Arians at 69. And then Pete Carroll at 70. These guys can coach as long as they're staying healthy, and they mostly are. You're up to 70 years old. You can coach. So you can get a few good years out of Caldwell, but you have to look at the staff he builds around him in this job. But I do like Jim Caldwell for this job.
I think he has a lot of respect around the league, too.
He does.
And so I think he won't have any problem getting coaches to come in. Mm-hmm. And again, I just think he's a no-ego guy, right? It's not going to be like this is the way we're doing things. He'll bring in, I think he'll build and assemble a great staff. It is a point that, he's not going to be the long-term coach for the next decade to 15 years. But again, it might just be the guy to get this franchise back on the right trajectory and go from there.
Mm. And that's what they need. It's a perfect fit, and it'd be a smart hire for a young GM to have a guy with that experience to bounce ideas off of. Moving on, our next open job, Miami Dolphins. They fired Brian Flores. Flores was 24 and 25, but it felt like he was always doing a better job than what that roster was. They have interviewed Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniel, who's becoming one of our favorites. Just go on Twitter and just search Mike McDaniel. Fantastic. Dan Quinn, Vance Joseph, Kellen Moore, Leslie Frazier, and Rams associate head coach and running backs coach Thomas Brown. Who do you like for this job?
I like Brian Daboll. I think that's who ends up getting the job. and I think he's earned that job, right? He's been a name that's been tossed around for the last couple of years. I think that he's somebody that can step in. I think he'll be a good fit in the organization too. He would be my favorite out of that group, and I do think that that's what ends up happening.
Daboll's a guy who was once at Bama with Nick Saban. He was a Browns offense coordinator under Eric Mangini, and what he's done with Josh Allen is nothing short of incredible. I mean, when Josh Allen came out, we saw the talent the kid had, but he had never thrown more than 55% completion in any level of football. I mean, he had the inaccuracy issues. He couldn't figure out his mechanics, and Daboll comes in there, and he was the voice of reason. He was the guy to just sit down, break him down, and get him to understand what he needed to do. And I'm not giving all the credit to Daboll. Obviously, Josh Allen's worked his ass off, and having Sean McDermott there and that just staff around him has been great in Buffalo, the way they've done that whole franchise. Turned Josh Allen into an amazing football player, and Josh Allen does not look anything like the Josh Allen that came out of Wyoming, other than the fact that he's still white and tall and has a rocket arm. But yeah, Brian Daboll, I think, really nice job with that, and I think he'd be a great fit in Miami. But I mean, is he that much better than Brian Flores? I mean,
well, no, but they're not going to hire Brian Flores.
No, it's just crazy to think that. What are you doing, really?
I mean, I don't know, man. I guess it has to be the fact that they butted heads at between the head coach level and the organization and kind of personnel. It's I
don't know. It's a weird thing. Moving on to the Giants, they hired Bill's assistant general manager Joe Schoen as their new GM. They need to replace Joe Judge, who deserved to be fired after all the bullshit he spewed. They've interviewed Dan Quinn, Brian Flores, Daboll, Frazier, Patrick Graham, and Bengals defense coordinator Lou Anarumo. Is this Brian Flores' spot?
Yes, for me it is. Bro, Ben McAdoo got a gig. Ben McAdoo is back.
Yeah, Ben McAdoo.
I mean, what's finally, Carolina doing down there? They're just digging their own grave. Listen, why would you bring in Ben McAdoo? What's happening?
We need to get our boy Nick Wilson back on the show. Nick Wilson, for those who didn't watch, it's posted. It is the pinned thing on our Facebook, FB.me.
I would love to have him back on.
Nick Wilson, one of our best guests ever, and to hear the Ben McAdoo thoughts would be great. I was listening to some of his Instagram stories. He's working from home right now. He's working out. He's losing a ton of weight. He's doing really good, and we need to get him back on. But yeah, Ben McAdoo in Carolina. I know we're going off topic, but that's what we do here. Listen, we have made fun of Ben McAdoo so much, and I always call him the guy the creepy dude sitting at the end of the Applebee's bar, hitting on those servers. Like, that's just how I see this dude.
Though, but yeah, maybe not hitting on the waitresses. But
I mean, just hanging out at the end of the bar and hitting them with horrible pickup lines.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was going to drop one, but I'm not going to do that here. This is a family show, baby. But anyway, Ben McAdoo, whatever. Maybe, I mean, he was good as an OC for a little bit. Like, he was okay, but Carolina, come on. You're going to just keep, I don't know, man. You had Joe Brady, who seemed to be the up-and-comer. Then you're like, let's ruin him and make him do things he doesn't want to do, and then you do that. But, hey, at least we know that in 2023 we'll be talking about who's going to be the head coach for the Carolina Panthers. Anyway, back to this. We both think Brian Flores will be the guy here in New York. Houston Texans, this franchise. David Culley fired, and last year, before they hired Culley, they wanted to interview Josh McCown. Everyone laughed it off, and this year, once again, they want to hire Josh McCown. So why don't they just hire Josh McCown and get it over with?
I think they probably will.
Just do it. Enough. You talked to this guy multiple times. You liked him enough.
Just because no other team is considering interviewing Josh McCown, that doesn't mean that he's not the right call. Listen, if that's the guy you want, you are the billionaire owner of the football team. Do whatever the hell you want. Don't listen to anybody else. Do you?
100%. And I mean, we all talk about Josh McCown, what a smart dude he is, and hell of a football player. He's the kind of guy you'd want to play with. Why would you not want to play for him? We'll see. And for those who don't remember, Doug Peterson was the guy who everyone laughed at when the Eagles hired him. Doug Peterson let him do a Super Bowl. Obviously, Doug Peterson had more coaching experience, but Josh McCown. And you know what? I think if you're going to interview Josh McCown, I think you should interview Phillip. Interview Phillip. Get him on the dadgum sidelines. He's coaching high school football at least. Give it to that. But no.
Phillip with a dozen children could put in the time to coach. Imagine being his wife if he started coaching, which is being there even more than it is being a player. He's got a whole dozen eggs of kids. Like there, you can't. Yeah, I mean, I love Philip. I was hoping that he came back for that one game, but too bad.
Yeah. We all love Philip. Who doesn't? Maybe his wife would be happy he's not there. Like she could let herself rest a little bit. Like she knows she's not going to get knocked up this week. I mean, they're due for another one at some point. Like she can let that shit rest. As we say, it's a family show, and then we're going to this. Yeah.
I wonder what the cutoff is for them. Like, where do you stop?
Like Philip, listen, 26 kids. That's enough. I know you made a lot of money in the NFL, but kids are just falling out as I'm doing the dishes, honey. Okay, let's
54
relax. All right, let's move on to the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders, they fired general manager Mike Mayock. Don't have anyone in yet. They still have Rich Bisaccia as their technical interim head coach. They've interviewed Bisaccia, they've interviewed Gerard Mayo, and they've interviewed D'Amico Ryans. And it seems like, you don't have a GM in place, really. Bisaccia is just kind of sitting there. You kind of took care of the Rooney Rule. Are they just holding things off until they can give full power to Jim Harbaugh?
Maybe. It kind of seems that way.
Feels like
I think that may be what they want to do. I think the interim is a good backup case, like because it's not like they're coming for Bisaccia. Like it's not like other teams want to interview him.
And I don't understand why. Obviously, if he's still head coach, he might not be able to. But if I'm running an organization after what he did for the Raiders, I would be asking for permission at least.
Yeah, so I do think that the Raiders eventually, if they haven't already, make an offer to Harbaugh, and I think that's kind of like they're putting their eggs in that basket, and if not, I mean, again, it's just like I don't know if you want Harbaugh taking over the team and personnel, and like I just don't know. I don't know if it's the right play. I hope it happens because it'd be interesting to see how it unfolds. But I'll go with Harbaugh at this spot because this has been the rumored spot since the jump. And I continue to read articles and stories on how if they want Harbaugh will more than likely, accept the position. So we'll see.
And I'm with you there. I think Harbaugh is what they want, and I think eventually where they go. However, we do know that Stephen Ross is a Michigan guy. He does run the Miami Dolphins. He did say that he would not be the guy to take Harbaugh away from Michigan. However, if he hears that he is leaving Michigan and heading to Las Vegas, does he then jump in and try to get Jim Harbaugh to Miami?
I'd rather go to Oakland, Vegas if I was him.
I think that's a better spot for him. Yeah, it is. Tougher division, but I think more to play with there right off the bat. And we went over those. We're 34 minutes into the show already, and we haven't even talked about last weekend. And last weekend, we got to get into this right now because we tried to hold it off. But, dude, was it the best weekend of football that you have ever seen, or am I just overplaying this?
I keep wanting to not say it because I think it's like an overreaction, but then you're like, is it really an overreaction? If it's not the best, it's right there, right? It's one of the best. We got two shootouts. We got two close games. Like we got two low scoring games. The fact that Rodgers can only put up 10's incredible.
Second time this year, Rodgers made us think he had a shot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, and so and listen, I'm happy for Joe Burrow. I continue to want to see that team play. I do not want to see them out. Joe Burrow wasn't necessarily flawless in that game, but he still almost had 350, I believe.
Sacked 9 times. He was barely upright.
And we knew that was going to be the issue, right? We talked about it. So that's going to be the issue. And then to see Stafford kind of get it done. Big play to Cooper Kupp, 0 blitz. Really not sure what they were doing there defensively.
Cover Kupp.
Yeah, exactly.
That's playing 6-year-olds in Madden defense. Like I get the idea, but at least
And then
Chip
the Chiefs
Cooper.
Bills, dude, the encore of the weekend was it's as good as it gets, man.
I mean, you look at these games and you watch the first game of the weekend, Tennessee, Cincinnati. You're like, this is a pretty good game. It's going to come down to it. You saw the interception by Amani Hooker. The ball is tipped off Chris Evans' hands. He gets that ball millimeters from the turf. And you're like, all right, Titans are going to turn around right here. Titans get ahead, and then the Bengals come back, and the Bengals are up. And then Evan McPherson, who is just a stud kicker.
Cold-blooded killer.
Just cold-blooded. He's kicking on the sidelines, looks at the holder. He's like, looks like we're going to the AFC Championship. Like, rookie, ballsy. Love it because he made it. 1960. I'm like, that's a good game. No way the next game's going to be better. Then we go to San Francisco and Green Bay. And that game, Packers come out. Boom, 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 boom. Down the field, Devontae Adams touchdown. I mean, or not Devontae Adams, but Devontae Adams had like 5 catches on the first drive, and then Dillon pounds it in for the touchdown. So you're like, okay, they're up 7-0. This is going to be interesting. Jimmy G looked terrible. George Kittle was dropping balls, but the defense and special teams were playing pretty damn good for the Niners. Then all of a sudden, a block kick happens before halftime. So you're still in it. And then a punt block ends up being the game-changing play. The Niners end up winning it 13-10, and special teams killed the Packers all year long. So that game was somehow even better. Rodgers played okay, but not great. Jimmy G was not good, but they did enough to win. And Kittle finally stood up in the second half. So then we go into Sunday, and we're like, okay, how are these games going to be any better than what we saw on Saturday? All of a sudden, it's 27-3, and you're like, Rams are just running away with this. And then you're like, wait, 27-3? That's like almost 28-3. And you're like, no, Brady can't do this. And then all of a sudden it's 27-27. And you're like,
it was almost like
what?
Cam Akers had money on the game, like,
Yeah.
and the Bucks. Like, he just kept fumbling.
And we talked about Cam Akers like he was going to be the game changer. And on our TikTok at FCFS Pod, we posted our thoughts on that game. And we said that if Brady was thrown 50 times, then they were going to lose. And that's exactly what happened. But it almost backfired because he almost pulled it out anyway. Brady, unbelievable what he did to come back in that without his starting tackle. Just struggling for most of the game. And then all of a sudden there's like, oh, Scotty Miller's still on this team. Oh, Cam Brate, we're going to throw it to everybody. We're going to open things up. And we're going to get in the end zone and tie this up at 27-27. So then you're like, there's only 52 seconds or so left. We're going to overtime. Thinking, oh, this is cool. Overtime game. And then 2 plays later, Cooper Kupp gets them in field goal range. Matt Gay kicks a 48-yarder or whatever it was. Not even, it was closer than that, I believe. And you're like, all right, Rams are going to the NFC title game. How can the next game top that? Can it? And then, unbelievable. What happened in the last 2 minutes of
like 29
Bills.
Points scored in like the last 2 minutes.
Unbelievable. And that's another thing. 13 seconds left. You're not going to cover over the middle of the field. We went from 14 seconds of insanity from, wild card weekend where the Cowboys couldn't do anything in 14 seconds to Pat Mahomes hitting Tyreek Hill and then Travis Kelce and then Harry Butker drilling a field goal to send it to overtime. And then this is where everyone freaks out because overtime, the Bills didn't get the football. What could Josh Allen have done? Could have called heads for one. He didn't, and they didn't get the football. But the overtime rule, let's get into that real quick. Should they change the overtime rules, or are you fine with the way it went down?
I'm fine with it.
Me too. You got a defense out there.
Yeah, you got 60 minutes to win the game, right?
No.
You just got to get a stop. It was like 13 seconds to go 50 yards.
Yeah.
Like, if you can't stop somebody in going 50 yards in 13 seconds, I don't give a damn if it's Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's just it's unacceptable. So, like, I don't want to. Would I love to see Josh Allen have another shot at it? Of course, but like, I'm not going to just change the rule. I think both teams possess the opportunity to touch the ball as long as you don't give up 6.
Yep.
Okay, and that's all you got to do. So, yeah, I have no problem with the overtime rule. If it changed, would I be pissed? Probably not. But, like, what do you change it to? You'll go to the 25 like in college. Like, I mean, what do you do?
Go to the 25. Don't let the stats count. But
the 25
that's
seems gimmicky to me, though.
It is to a certain extent in the NFL. And I like the way it is where all you got to do is don't let him in the end zone. That's it.
Exactly.
And I get that. But the thing is, the 13 seconds you brought up, perfect. This is the number 1 defense in the league this year, the Bills. And they couldn't stop them when it came time to actually do it. And I get they were tired as hell. And for them to have to go back out there on that opening drive, you knew it wasn't going to be good. Maybe if you do anything, give them 10 minutes in between, like a little mini halftime. where you can just let guys rest their bodies for a few minutes and then get back out there. Yeah, do something. But that game, I mean, absolutely unbelievable. So we have, moving on, the Bengals against the Chiefs, and we have the Rams welcoming in the 49ers, who have beat them 6 times in a row. Absolutely unbelievable weekend of football, and I just can't wait for this weekend. We start with our first game. Let's get into it. Let's bring this up first. Let's show how this went. I went against you in all but one game, and basically I went 1-3. You went 3-1. You extended your lead to 5 games. It is over, ladies and gentlemen. There is no way I can come back, even if we went with Super Bowl and Pro Bowl. So for the second year in a row,
the Pro Bowl, you want to go?
Yeah. Listen, I was like, how can we figure this out? Like, there's only really 4 games left.
Preseason. What about the Hall of Fame game?
Yeah. What it's going to come down to is next year's Hall of Fame game, bud. No, we're not even going to get into that. Drew, congratulations. You won it this year, man. 2 years in a row. And here I am trying to go against Ward's Wagers, who was dominant. And we'll get into that coming up, of course. Let's get into this weekend's game. Cincinnati Bengals 12-7 now on the year. Heading to Arrowhead Stadium, GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. And we're 14-5. I mean, the way we're looking, and yes, way to go, Drew. Getting props.
Thank you.
I mean,
it was hard fought.
It was pretty damn easy when I just decided to go against you and lost all those games.
You were just doing dumb shit. You just started picking teams for no reason, like that weren't going to win. And
no, I went with some gut feelings. Listen, I'm a fat boy. I got a substantial gut. You know, sometimes I got to trust the gut. And maybe the gut's saying, "Don't trust me. Get rid of me, you fat piece of shit." But anyway, we're gonna get back into this. Sunday, January 30th, 2022, 3 p.m. We got a Bill Vinovich game. This should be interesting. Bengals lead the all-time series against the Chiefs, which I thought was weird. And Zach Taylor's never lost a playoff game. Is this the first time?
Yeah, it is. I think it comes to an end here. I just think the offensive line it can't hold up. I mean, he's just getting pummeled. Like the fact that Joe Burrow has done what he's done so far in these playoffs is truly remarkable, because there's someone in his lap within a half a second every snap. And we talked about in the offseason that this was the gamble they took, whether you went with Penei Sewell or you went with Jamar Chase, right? They went the Jamar Chase route, which has worked out to be just great. And listen, they can build the offensive line in the draft and free agency this year, which they're going to need to do. And they know that they need to do that.
They got the money to do it.
But it's just, I think this is as far as they can go with the offensive line that they currently have. And listen, the Chiefs have guys on the edge that can get home. Chris Jones. It's just a really tough matchup for the Bengals, and I think this is kind of where the Cinderella story, for lack of a better word, kind of comes to an end.
Yeah, this is where the carriage turns back into a pumpkin. I don't want to see it. I think we both would prefer to see Cincinnati win here. Mm-hmm. And we saw Cincinnati beat them Week 17, 34-31 in a shootout where Jamar Chase was just unguardable. And Joe was just like, hey, fuck, he's out there somewhere, and he did it, and they won that game. And they won the AFC North, and now they've just been rolling ever since. But what we said they needed to do last week was make sure they stopped the pressure up the middle. They didn't, and somehow they still got the win. I mean, 9 sacks on Burrow. Unbelievable. And Burrow just
stinks. Tennessee needs a pivot. Tennessee needs a pivot at quarterback. I don't know what they do, but Tannehill's not winning you a Super Bowl. You got to figure it. You were the most overrated 1 seed ever. I don't give a damn if you bring back Derrick Henry or not. Ryan Tannehill throwing 3 picks and looking like absolute ass out there is just not going to get it done. That's who he is. You've kind of put makeup on a pig to an extent for the last couple of years. You have lots of weapons there. That team, if they could find a way to bring in, whether it's, we talk about it, Watson, Rodgers, either of those two. Yeah, or even Russ Wilson. Exactly. If you bring those in, then all of a sudden that team can go some places. They'll have good normal regular seasons, but when it comes down to the playoffs, just not going to get it done. And they can't play from behind because he's not a threat to throw the ball anywhere. And if they can't work off play action, what the hell are we doing? Like, exactly. Derrick Henry has to be successful. Otherwise, that offense is not that good.
Can't say anything against it. 100% right. Everything you said there. I mean, that rant was 100% what's going on with the Titans. And I mean, I tweeted out right after the game, like, what do they do? Do they try to move on from here?
I don't know.
What do they do?
I don't know what they do. I don't think they can.
The instant response I got was the Browns should trade Baker Mayfield to Tennessee for Ryan Tannehill. And I did not even respond to it because I didn't know what to say. But yeah.
The math doesn't even work. Like, people understand, like, salary caps are also involved in trades.
Yeah, but why? What? You're trading a 26-year-old quarterback who struggles for 30.
You're trading Ryan Tannehill for Ryan Tannehill.
I mean, basically right now, yeah. And I mean, Ryan Tannehill is obviously better than he was in Miami, but he's kind of peaked. We know what he is at this point. He's not the guy who's going to win it for you. You need a lot of help around him, and he's got a ton of weapons, and he just couldn't get it done.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to the Chiefs. I think the Chiefs they're rolling, and I think Chris Jones. You brought him up. Chris Jones is going to push that pocket. He's going to make it really tough, and I think this has to be a game where you have to get rid of that ball instantly, and Jamar Chase has got to be open. But if you're not covering Jamar Chase, Steve Spagnuolo, you deserve to be fired instantly. Not allowed on the bus, not allowed in the locker room. Like, they leave you on the field, and basically they let someone hit you like that guy who decided to run on the field and get laid out by
Luckily, he has a short commute home. I mean, if he's from Cincinnati, it'd be a little different. But, yeah, no.
If you do not set up some game plan to just take Jamar Chase out of it, I mean, the thing is, though, like, they've got T. Higgins, they've got Tyler Boyd, CJ, who's your mama. They've got weapons, but how much of a difference does it make if the Honey Badger plays or not?
A lot, in my opinion.
With you.
A lot. But again, it's just like, I just think that there's too much firepower offensively for Kansas City. And I just think that offensive line is not going to be hold up for Cincinnati. I think once Cincinnati gets an offensive line, I mean, you're kind of screwed. Your team is all of a sudden not the beautiful girl at the dance anymore.
Mm-mm. The Bengals are the
you gotta have a couple drinks to talk to your team.
Dude. Might be more than a couple. I mean, if Baker plays like he did this year, we ugly.
It's true.
We like 2 a.m. like beer goggles definitely needed. But
yeah, that's true.
The thing is this last year at this time it was the Browns who were the sweetheart. Now it's the Bengals. But
I think one quarterback's considerably better than the other. And
I'm not going to argue that.
I'm not sure it's.
And I think Burrow's just sick, and I think they can win this game. I think it's going to be close, but I think at the end of the day, this Kansas City team looks like they're just on a mission, and I don't think they're going to lose it. I will also take Kansas City, so that could put us in a tie there. Woo, I'm not coming back anyway. And this is the Tony Romo, Jim Nantz, Jay Feely game. And before we go to the next, Jay Feely as the kicking expert, does he bring anything to the kicking expertise?
Not sure I needed a kicking expert, right? Like kick ball in between the goalposts. Like, that's all I'm asking. Like, I don't need you to tell me the philosophy and the technique behind it.
No. And I mean, if he was doing that, I'd be fine. If he was doing that. But he's like, he was hitting from 58 before the game in this direction. Like, yeah, we saw that. Like, if you have Twitter, you saw that. Like, give me something else, Jay Feely. He kicks with his right leg, and he uses his toe to put it into the ball, and it lifts it in the air. Like, no kidding. So we're both taking Kansas City. San Francisco 49ers at Los Angeles Rams. The Niners 6-0 against the Rams. Their last 6 games. I mean, this sets up perfectly for the Niners. And the Niners are looking scary, but they look terrible in the red zone as well.
Please don't let the Niners go to the Super Bowl, bro. I don't want to watch Jimmy G against Patrick Mahomes. Like, again, I understand the Niners do good things and like they're like out, like they prop up what is Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, I don't want to see that.
I mean, this is a tough game for you. Do you want to see Matt Stafford get there, or do you want to see Jimmy G there?
Yeah, I'm going with the Rams.
I don't
give a damn about that. I don't care about the other 6 games. Okay. Like, this is a whole different ballgame.
I mean, the last time they faced in the playoffs, the Niners won 30-3, and that was in 1990. That means a lot in this game right now.
Yeah.
But
after you said that, I do want to change my pick. No,
I mean, that was a big game for Jim Everett and Flipper Anderson against Joe Montana and Jerry Rice. John Taylor out there.
Yeah. I love a good Jimmy Garoppolo, Joe Montana comp. Both played quarterback for San Francisco.
Jimmy G, he's okay, and he's fine. He's not gonna win you the game necessarily, but he can lose you a game because he makes so many. He is almost Wentzian. Like, he's next level Wentzian on his poor decision making. Not quite Whedon like. It's like Whedon, then Wentz, then Jimmy G kind of ideas. He had one throw last week that was just, he was lucky as hell not to have it knocked down. And yeah, I get it. Everyone wants to say he's a good looking guy. He's a good looking dude. He's rich. Good for him. He's not that damn good. One thing I do like about the Niners is that defense is really good. They're well coached, and Deebo Samuel is so fun to watch.
And they know the Rams, right?
They do. But for me, I want the Rams in this one. I don't know if they're going to pull it off. I'm going to pick them. I want the Rams in this one. I want to see Staff get to the Super Bowl. And I think this is a much more entertaining matchup if we see Chiefs-Rams than if it's Chiefs-Niners or Bengals-Niners. And
it's just the Niners are the only team I don't want to see, like, in the Super Bowl. That's just the way it is. Like, I don't know. Like, at least, like, if you get the other three teams, we're going to see pushing the ball down the field. We're going to see a little bit more excitement. I mean, not that Deebo Samuel is not extremely exciting and a fantastic player. I just think out of the three teams, I'd rather have either Bengals, Chiefs play the Rams.
Yeah, 100% on there. This is our 6:40 kickoff. Depending on when the first game ends, it will only air once that first game ends. This is the Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Aaron Andrews, Tom Rinaldi game there on Fox and Fox Deportes. And if you're listening on the radio, national radio, you get Kevin Harlan on this one, and that's way more fun.
Legend.
I love Kevin Harlan on the radio with Kurt Warner and Laura Oakman as the field reporter. This game, come on, Rams, get it done. I mean, I'm not even going to go into it. It's just, I want the Rams to win. It's going to be a more fun Super Bowl. And I got nothing against the Niners necessarily. They're just not as fun because their quarterback's not as
I got a good buddy that's a Niners fan, but man, I just can't do the Jimmy G.
Let me ask you this, though, in this game. If you keep struggling in the red zone as the Niners, why not use Trey Lance? What do you have to lose?
I feel like it's more of a concern of a turnover, right? So, like, I get if you want to run Trey Lance potentially, but, like, when you get in the condensed zone, that is the red zone, when the field becomes shorter and we can use the back line as kind of an extra defender. When you're this deep in the playoffs, man, it's a risk. I wouldn't mind them doing it because I think you have to take risks at this point of the season. But I would think that would maybe be their concern about it. But who knows? I mean, Jimmy G doesn't really turn it over. Like, Jimmy G doesn't do anything great, but he doesn't really turn it over. So,
but he always has that possibility. I mean, I think he's gotten lucky not turning the ball over because he's had a bunch of just dumbass passes dropped. I mean, he had 12 picks this year on 20 touchdowns against Stafford, who had 41 touchdowns, 17 picks. Totally different quarterbacks.
Like 10 of them came in the last 4 games.
Yeah, it was a bad few games there at the end. But this game, Jalen Ramsey, I think, has to actually show up because he was toast for most of the end of the second half of the Bucs game. In the last Niners game, he looked terrible as well.
Yep.
So Jalen Ramsey needs to step up, needs to make that paycheck, needs to show that he is the best corner in the league, which he might not be anymore. Might not even be top 3. But that's another show, another day.
Skip.
Hey, we got 2 Skip references, and yeah, that's not a good thing. And something you brought up before we get out of here, before we get towards wage and then get out of here. People who haven't watched the Tom Brady Man in the Arena, or if you've watched it, the Man in the Arena, sponsored by Under Armour.
We're actually getting in under an hour tonight, so I'm definitely got an episode in me.
That's sweet.
But the last one I was watching, it was just like his whole growing up and shit. I don't really care about that. I just want to see you you win or lose and then talk crap about.
Listen, it's all pro Tom Brady, and I'm fine with that. I knew it was going to be, but something you brought up to me earlier this week is Skip Bayless was talking smack a decade and a half ago about Tom Brady being done. This guy has just been terrible, spewing BS for 16, 17 years on national television, and he's making
$10 million
a year. And Stephen A is doing the same thing. It's like, meanwhile, we're sitting here, we're having intelligent conversations, we're going back and forth, we're spewing opinions, we're basing it mostly on fact. And we're not sitting here making 10 million yet. We're going to work our way towards that eventually, because you should definitely listen to this show. But there's a good reason why you should listen to this show, and that is because if you are putting any money on this game, you need to be listening to this segment. Ward's Wagers, you're 40-23 against the spread this season, 3-1 last week. Ward's Wagers did get an assist from Jay's plays last week on the over-under in the Bills-Chiefs game, where we went with that to give you the 4.
I know. That was well done.
I'm throwing my one pick of the year out.
You're 1-0, dude.
Yeah.
You've literally won your only bet.
I mean, between that and my pick for Georgia making me a nice plus 800 on the money line this year.
You look like a genius, to be honest with you.
The only 2 times I've really put big money down, I was absolutely solid. But hey, sports betting coming to Ohio pretty soon, and you're going to see a more scruffy Jeremy who's going to be like, listen, man, you guys got to watch this show. Just come on, just so we get some of this advertising money in when I start going broke, because I'm going to be able to bet from my phone for no reason. Like, yeah, you know what? I feel really good about this random soccer game on ESPN3 at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Right.
That's
Japanese baseball bunt contest.
Hey,
throwing
that's the only baseball we're going to get.
On this.
Probably.
Baseball's trash anyway.
Yeah, baseball is trash, and I can't wait till we have our off-season shows where we just do.
Talk shit about
we always get our one show where we just talk other sports, and oh man, I cannot wait to talk about how shitty baseball is. Used to be my favorite sport. Let's get into it. Ward's Wagers. Let me see here. Let me make sure I get this all set up. And hey, there you are. Split screen. I can never find this when I need to. There you are.
There we go. All right. Welcome back, everybody. This week, it's like, this is the thing. So, like, I'm going to talk everybody through this real quick. So, the Bengals Kansas City line is Kansas City -7. I'm just not comfortable with that. I don't like it. I like Kansas City to win. I'm not sure a touchdown is something I'm willing to give up. So, with that game, I will take the under. So, the under is at 54.5. I will take the under in that game. And then we'll pivot to Rams, Niners. Only 2 this week. We're kind of winding down here, ladies and gentlemen. But I will take the Rams -3.5. I do think the Rams end up winning by 7 to 10 points. I don't want to touch this line. So this is the difference between the 2 games, Jeremy. Line in the Chiefs Bengals 54.5. Rams Niners 46. That's pretty significant. 8.5 point difference between the over-unders. So I'm going to go with those 2 for tonight.
2 good picks. 2 picks that if you place money down right now, you're probably going to win money. 40-23 against the spread this season, just absolutely kicking ass. You were well above 500 the last 2 years. Ward's Wagers continues to win going into the off season as we head into that moment of time. Remember, we are here every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. You can come and check us out there. Check us out on Twitter at Somerville CLE, at Detroit Dave 7. Check out our TikTok page at FCFS Pod. Stay tuned for more on our Instagram page coming up, where we're going to be doing some fun things. I'm still working on that. Got some other things to do. And hey, if you're playing DFS, be sure to check out our boy at Detroit BC, bottom of the barrel, because you're going to want to play the big boys, but who you're going to fit in to get under that salary cap. We'll have to have him back on before the Super Bowl. We'll get into that. Anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here tonight, brother?
No, man. I'm excited. Hopefully we get back-to-back good weekends of football. Not sure you can top that, so temper expectations, but it should be fun. Go Stafford.
100% with you. I want to see Staff get in. I want to see Burrow. I'd love to see Staff versus Burrow. Be a lot of fun. See the young cat versus the old cat trying to win a Super Bowl. The other guys have been there. They've done it. Let's get some new blood in there. Let's have some fun. But first, before we get out of here tonight, remember, as always, if you live the life you love the life you live. Night, kids.